So what happens is that innovation and creativity are often the terms which are used quite interchangeably, right? So somebody says that this is an innovative idea, you are a creative person, great idea, shall we patent the idea, right? So I think there is some sort of a semblance that we need to have. There is room here, sir. You can park this. So the idea of my research also and some of my teaching and writing, etc., has largely been around that how do firms become more innovative and individuals become more creative. That's the whole plank of the discussion. Now if you look around yourself for a moment, in this room or maybe when you go out, you see the traffic. So don't you think that human beings are the most powerful species on the surface of Earth?
Yes, definitely.
I mean, except for those who are married. My wife is more powerful. But in general, I'm saying, human beings are the most powerful species, right? So what makes us most powerful? Thinking, right? Ability to think. What else? Anyone's special abilities like man type? You know what? I can code fast. Thinking. So we are not as fast as a panther or as venomous as a snake or as powerful as an elephant perhaps. It's our ability to think. And also what is most ironic is that on a day-to-day basis in our workplace, at our home, otherwise also, this faculty of ours is perhaps one of the most underutilized faculties. We have become so attuned to doing things day in and day out that we actually underutilize our own thinking abilities, isn't it? We've been given standard operating procedures, KT from our supervisors, and exactly, these are the kind of things that we need to do and do it. So what has happened is that over the years, productivity, efficiency has taken over precedence on what we are very good at, which is creativity. Now, if you look at this evolution of humankind, and I can perhaps trace the evolution of humankind to this thumb, right? Look at this thumb. We all have two perhaps. So this thumb was never there with us. What happened millions of years back is that we actually had the fifth finger, like this. So these are the 5 fingers we used to have. Now this fifth finger, through the years of evolution, started slipping from here. And it did not take overnight, hey, what is this? It didn't happen that way. It didn't even take a generation. Look, my kid has something new. So it took years. And what happened through these years of evolution, hundreds of years of evolution, is that we got this thumb. Now the moment you have a thumb, is an opposable thumb, right? It's an opposable thumb. You can hold stuff with this thumb. You can't hold these things with the finger as much as with the thumb. With this thumb, now you can make tools. You can start killing animals, I mean to say. You can start killing animals. So from being a gatherer, you actually become a hunter. And you go out. That's okay, no worries. You can stand at the back if you want. We'll give you a discount. 50 bucks. So we actually end up becoming much and more distant from the nests. Now this nest is where we used to talk in monosyllables. So if I have to call my bro, I can quickly call. If I have to call my wives, I can perhaps. So that was a very simple conversation that used to happen. But the moment I'm stepping out of my nest, I need to develop sophisticated vocabulary to talk to them. I need to be able to yell. So for me to be able to yell, I needed an erect spinal cord so that I can have a very strong vocal cords. To be able to store that vocabulary, because I cannot keep chirping like birds all the time, I need to develop some sophisticated language. And that's where the birth of language happened. And that is where we need this something called the neocortex. Neocortex is the new cover of the brain. So our brain has multiple stages of development, right? So from a very early stage called neurochassis, then we have limbic brain, then R complex. And the most recent part of the brain is this neocortex. Neocortex means new cover. It's Latin for new cover. So if you trace back the evolution of us, it actually happened with this opposable thumb. On this millennia of the evolution of human being, how old do you think jobs are? That to the IT industry. How old?
30.
Right? We are talking 10 to the power of 6 is the scale. And how old is the IT industry on this scale come again? It's not even a blip. It's not even a blip. Which means that we can endure, we have endured, our species have actually endured several such bursts and booms and the IT industry and the semicolons. We have done that, all of it. To assume that this is the biggest thing which is happening in our lives, this job is the most important thing that has happened to me, thank God for that, or Bangalore is the happening place, I think this is just a misconception. We are far more powerful than what we tend to think of ourselves on a day-to-day basis. And that is the whole idea of the session today. I want all of us to try and realize that on an individual basis, you can sit down.
That's okay.
Right, we'll see eventually. So on a evolutionary perspective, what we need to understand is that we need to use our faculties of creativity more often than not what we're using, right? That is the pretext of the discussion here. Luckily or incidentally, my research is also on the same space. So I'm rather lucky to actually research on something which I've always believed in. And what better, my institute is paying me for that. So my institute pays me every single day for sitting in the library and reading books and meeting wonderful people like him. So here is a question to all of you. The question is, what time of a typical day is your mind full of ideas? Typical day, not the working day generally, but typical day. Where is your mind full of ideas? It's a very personal answer.
Morning.
Be a little more specific.
In the bathroom.
Even he knows that. What else? Bathroom. What's the other moment of the day? Go ahead, I mean, you don't have to be shy. Oh my God. How can I not think?
Driving.
Yeah.
Driving. Before sleeping, after waking up.
In
Or
the
is it-
traffic.
In the traffic, yeah. It looks like a man to me. Let me see. Sorry?
While sleeping.
While sleeping.
Dreams.
Dreams. So how do you differentiate between a dream and an idea?
Something is running, right?
Oh, something is running. I'll give that to you. Sir,
While sleeping.
While-
Before sleeping.
before sleeping? All right. How about you, sir?
Early morning after wake up.
Yeah, that's a redundant statement, but that's okay. What else?
While at the gym.
While at the gym. I was almost about to. Ma'am.
When I'm playing with my son.
Anybody else?
While running.
While running away from? How about you, sir?
Morning.
Morning. Anybody has a very peculiar habit that only when I sit on the ground that I start thinking.
While smoking.
While smoking. While smoking.
Having tea.
While having tea or maybe coffee also.
Actually in the loo.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to use the word actually, that's fine. Same here, by the way. So, now what is common across all these moments? Let's think about it. While jogging, some people say, while playing with your kids, while taking a drive, or while taking a shower once in a while. What is common across all these moments in time? What's common?
You're taking a break from your usual activity.
Wonderful, you're taking a break, sir.
And you're not really engaged in some activity.
As such, yeah. Okay, you're relaxed.
Yeah, relaxed.
Generally.
You don't have to stress yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
You're on a wall.
Generally. Can I get some room? What else?
You're not concentrating on any particular thing.
Very good. What else?
There is a free flow of thoughts. I mean, there is no restriction on anything.
I got that. Free flow of thoughts. What else?
When there is a daily routine.
So every day you have some time for ideation. What else?
You are not deterministic.
The end goal is not very clear. Okay, wonderful. So now think of all these characteristics of these moments. You are alone typically, there is no pressure on you, right? You don't have a very clear end objective and you are not preoccupied. What moments of the working day, when you punch in till the time you punch out, what time of the working day do these things meet? What are the moments of the day, working day, when these things actually happen? When you're allowed to be on your own, no pressure, do whatever you want to do, wherever you want to. Tell me.
In cafeteria.
In cafeteria.
During taking food.
Taking food. What else?
Any informal discussions?
Any informal discussion? What else?
In the loo again.
In the loo again. So,
Whenever it happens.
whenever. That's more important. Whenever. Hey guys, shall we? I want to think. Let's carry the laptop also. So the point is that we have just concluded something very profound right now. The conclusion is that offices are actually designed for productivity and not creativity. You know that? All the offices, if you walk down this aisle, you would quickly realize that the way these things are managed, I don't think of any other per capita, per square feet utilization which is better than these cubicles. I mean, only that we'll be standing after some time now, right? That's the best utilization that is possible. So the whole idea of an office is actually productivity. But we fool ourselves once in a while with these sessions that, okay, let's be creative. What it means is that, if 8 hours is productive, is meant for productivity for which you can actually pay your EMIs eventually, right? That's where you work. If 8 hours is about productivity, the 16 hours have to be about creativity. And that is a latent desire that I have for the session today. It is I think it's an obligation that all of us have to ensure that we are much more creative than what we entered this organization as. Now let me do a small test with all of you to see how creative you are. Can we do that? It just takes a small pick and draw your mind. Are you fine with that? Alright, I'm just kidding, bro. So take a piece of paper out and maybe you can take a mobile phone out since we don't carry these pieces of paper anymore. Though for those who are carrying the good old notebook and a pen,
I can get books if you want.
yeah, let's do that. Good old practice. Don't check your emails, please. Kindly. The job is secure. No worries. You should.
The chairs
There are chairs, right? Yeah.
It's for us.
Can you guys push back a bit? Yeah. So we do a small exercise right now. Please. Thank you. Okay, so for those who have notebooks, can I see your notebook, please? Notebook and a pen. Paper is fine. Paper is fine. Anybody else? You can put your hand straight up like this. Okay. Wonderful. That's okay. People will come and they'll take it. Don't worry. Thank you very much. Okay, sir. He's getting a move for you. Okay, so exercise like this. What we'll do is we'll test your creativity quotient. You know what is IQ? What is IQ? Okay, how is IQ measured? Yes, if you be positive, you're high IQ, is it? Okay, negative, no. How is IQ measured?
IQ tests.
Wonderful. I mean, I think I got the answer. Do you think you want to elaborate a bit further? Offer a subtitle to that answer? 9 font times New Roman. You think you should do that? One thing which I'll come to in a short while from now is this. You would realize one thing that. Alright. Alright, bonus day. Are you going? Need some more. Yeah, take this bottle. Take this bottle.
One more book. Flip should have brought that book, right? Here. Pens.
Don't take them home. Office property. Alright, makes sense. Okay, sit down, please settle down, all of you. Okay, you also please have a notebook. So here is a question to all of you. IQ is nothing but your mental age divided by your chronological age. Okay, and then they ask you questions about pattern seeking. The basic understanding of intelligence is about your ability to predict. That's intelligence. A very simple word. If someone can predict, the person is intelligent. If someone cannot predict, the person is not intelligent. It's a very simple definition. So IQ of above 100 means your mental age is more than your chronological age. So if you're 42, your mental age is maybe 45. For people who have this IQ below 80, they're retarded because their mental age is not as high as their chronological age. It's a very simple measure. But the more interesting measure which I am keen on today is your creativity quotient. Sir, you need a notebook. Yeah, you need a notebook. Can you give him one? You have a pen?
Yeah, I chose this.
No, I don't want to use this. Take this. Alright. So, all are set? Okay, let's have a small test. That's more like it. That was appraisal time. Needs improvement. Okay, so here is a quiz for all of you. I'll give you a simple question and I'll give you 2 minutes to solve the question. Okay? 2 minutes starts after I stop speaking. I need to identify as many answers to the question as possible. Okay? I'll rate you not on the quality of the answer. I'll rate you on the quantity of the answer. As many as, not as good as. Am I with you on that? I don't really care how good is your answer. I just need to worry about how many answers you have. So I'm nudging you again and again. Another thing is that these answers need not be logical. Don't worry about the logic. Anything goes. Should I start good afternoon, or if you're on? This recording is on, or should I start from good afternoon?
It's on.
Thank God.
Looks like it's going.
Yeah, take out my entire script, all the jokes and everything. Okay, shall we start now? So I'll give you a simple question. You have to answer as many answers as possible in 120 seconds. Shall we start? Okay. Now I'm showing you an object in the room. You need to write down what all can you do with the object. What are the various applications you can use the object? Okay. These applications, apps need not be practical. Shall we start?
Yes.
All right. Here is the object. This one. This object.
Yes, to say start.
Start. Oh, sorry. Start. All right. 120 seconds. What all can you do with this object? Keep writing down ideas which you have.
You're trying to use something.
Yeah, exactly. What all can you do with the object? Need not be practical. Anything goes. Minute is up. Last minute. Thirty seconds to go, please. Anyone supplementary? I need a pen. Last 10 seconds, please. All right, last 1 second. Time's up, guys. Sorry, I know you're oozing with ideas. It's 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Okay. All right. Let's have a show of hands, and I'll tell you. I'll ask how many ideas, how many solutions will you create? 5 or more than 5? That's more like it. Okay. 8 or more than 8? 8 or more than 8? 10 or more than 10? 12 or more than 12? 14 or more than 14? 14 or more than 14? Sir, how many?
I think more than 20, 25. Something.
Just give me a count. How many, ma'am? 31. 16. 15. 20. 14. Are you embarrassing others? Okay. Go ahead, read it out for us. What can you do with this cup?
Drinking tea, shower, then again drinking water, store things, play, dance, break it, drive, running slowly, skipping, cooking, use it as a mouse, watch TV, video, live, diapers, bath, friends, flip it, again mobile, writing, singing, ringing, jewelries, books, watch it.
I like that. Yeah.
Read somewhere.
See, the caveat here was that these ideas need not be practical, right? So full marks to her, and I kept on telling you that I am looking at the volume of ideas and not the quality of ideas per se. Anyone has? How many you have, sir?
35.
35. Keep going.
You wrote 4.
Good. Yeah.
Cup, ceramic, sipping, spilling, sound, reflection, design, art, white, circle, bottom face, empty, full, plain, smooth, milk, sugar, group, coffee day, tools, food, curve, value, money, job, livelihood. I'm not understanding what I read. Injury, bandage, sand,
You qualify. 16, someone there? 16, sir, go ahead.
40, draw circle, play, catch, stand on it, break it, scratch your head.
Is it some chronology? Break it. Draw some square. Yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
Use as mask, rotate over your fingers, hide under your chappal. Put it inside your shirt, throw it on the line.
Keep going, I'm with you. Very much, I appreciate that.
Water plants, keep onions, scribble your awards, names on it.
Why onions? Yeah, but that's okay.
Scribble your awards, names on it, color it.
Look, so the idea is that this is a very classic human tendency. The classic human tendency is that whenever you are being given the license to make mistakes, still many of us are incapable of making mistakes. We are so tuned to sanctioning our own behavior, checking us, ye kya likh raha hai? Yoga ke nahi, right? Whereas you have been actually given the license to go out and freak out. And ironically, the more higher you are up in the hierarchy, this disease is much more acute. You know, while thrashing others, you also start thrashing yourself. Ye kya kar raha hai? Aisa to thodi na ho. It's not impossible to happen. Whereas, even if I told you that creativity is, and you would realize often and often again that when you do these brainstorming sessions in your organization, the biggest fallacy people have is when managers send their group of people to do a brainstorming session and come up with ideas, they often ask them, give me 2 good ideas. By the end of the day, if you can just give me 2 good ideas, I'm fine. Go to a resort, give me 2 good ideas. It's a different thing, what they do at the resort, but then 2 good ideas. There are never 2 good ideas actually. There are 100 ideas. And it's the work of the damn manager to make those 2 ideas out of 100 ideas and not the job of these guys. So the flaw of our thinking here is actually we look at quality and not quantity. And the law of the nature is that quality comes out of quantity. Quality comes out of, so write it down, it's a very important. Ma'am, you mind writing it down? Quality comes out of quantity. Like an artist. Do you think that great artists are great on day 1? They decide early morning, now it's time to become a great artist actually. Do you think they are great on day 1? Great musicians? Great playwrights? No. They write, keep writing. They have to overcome the writer's block. They keep writing, they keep taking snaps, they keep painting. And one of those days, the magnum opus just comes out. Whereas the manager of yours asks you, ki mujhe ek achha idea de do bas, then you're done. You're promoted if you give me 1 good ideas. There's nothing called 1 good ideas. Actually, some of the best ideas in the world are created by the fusion of average ideas. Like Twitter. Was Twitter the world's first blogging application? No, there was Blogger much before Twitter, I know for sure. Right? Was Twitter the world's first mobile apps? Again, no. But what Twitter did is that they fused a blogging application with a mobile application and 140 characters, because that's all you can see in a single screen without scrolling up or down. And all of a sudden, boom, there are a whole host of people, especially celebrities, who don't care about semantics and syntax of writing English, they join Twitter. I am having a had food. So, the kind of people. So, this is where they opened up a completely new market, right? In the Arab Spring, when BBC and CNN were not allowed to get into these areas, Middle East, the world was knowing about the happenings through Twitter, wasn't it? Twitter is the preferred channel for Barack Obama to congratulate Modi when he became the Prime Minister. He didn't pick up a phone call. He didn't bother to pick up a phone call. He actually congratulated him on Twitter. Now, how old is Twitter? 7 years. And if you go to NYSE, the rating of Twitter is CCC. Twitter is a junk bond. CCC is the rating of Twitter. It's a junk bond. The company doesn't make profits. It makes revenue, but no profits at all. It's in complete red. But the point here is that if they would have waited for something new to come up altogether, they would have perhaps delayed everything. So the misconception that all of us have in our mind is that an innovation has to be something completely new to the world. Ain't happening. That class is called invention, not innovation. So here is a quiz for all of you. The quiz is, imagine that there are 7 million patents which are granted in the US Patent and Trademark Office. 7 million, 70 lakhs. What percentage of these patents have ever been commercialized? What's your best guess? Give me a sense of percentage.
Less than a percent.
Less than a percent. As a matter of fact, 0.2%. 99.8% of all the patents which have been commercialized, let alone filed, have never seen the light of the day. You can assume that these people had too much of money to throw on. These people were lazy to commercialize it. But another explanation could be that possibly the timing was not right. And the ability to commercialize something is not trivial. It's a non-trivial ability. Google search engine was not the first or the second or the third. Google search engine was 13th search engine. 13th. So one of the common dictums that we all follow and we fall through, especially in the IM scheme of things, is what we call as a first mover's advantage. That if you're first to the market, it doesn't happen that way. It might be the fact that the early bird takes the prey, but it is always the second mouse who gets the cheese. You know what happens to the first mouse? Right? So first mouse actually gets killed in the attempt of taking the cheese, and the second mouse takes the cheese. So in technology industry that you are very much a part of, the first mover advantage is not as important as what we call as a fast followers. The idea is not as important as the execution of the idea, isn't it? The whole application called AdSense was very much available 5 years before Google launched it with Microsoft. The whole concept of having a tablet was available with HP before anybody else came into the market. But it takes the guts of an Amazon to actually launch a Kindle, knowing very well that if I launch a Kindle, people might not buy my book in the physical hard copy, but that's fine because somebody else will sell it. So why don't I create an offer? Now if you go to Amazon and type a book title, you have 6 choices. 6 choices. A hardcover, paperback, second-hand, used, PDF, Kindle edition, whatever else you have. There are 6 choices available to you, and they even are a reseller of a local guy can resell their books through Amazon.com. So Amazon says, you need a book, I'll give you the book. But don't have to go anywhere else. I'll give you 6 options to choose from paperback, from a hardcover which is costliest, all the way to a second-hand book which might be even torn. And this company is the world's, what please?
I didn't get to the meaning of the sentence. Idea is not as important as execution of the idea.
So what I mean to say is that it doesn't matter if you or your company is the one who is coming up with an idea at the first place. I'll give you 3 examples to drive home the point. Example number 1 is digital photography. The digital photography as a concept was invented by Eastman Kodak. Now think of it that this company is Eastman Kodak. Now there are a bunch of folks who are actually experimenting and they come with a very rudimentary digital imaging application. Now this digital imaging application is very rudimentary as compared to your celluloid, which is what you have perfected over the last 80 years. Now you would think of this as a distraction because this gives you high margin, this is your brand, your bread and butter business, that's a distraction. So what do? You sell this entire patent of about $1 billion to a Japanese company by the name Sony. And Sony is more than happy to lap it up because they have nothing to show. Sony takes all the patents for $1 billion, gives the cash to this company just to see that Sony launches digital photography and takes it to the market. Inventions, not even an idea, all the inventions were lying with Eastman Kodak but commercialized by Sony. Another example is Motorola. Motorola invented the cell phones. Just to see that they filed bankruptcy recently and the Motorola business is now lying with Lenovo after going to Google. So there are so many of these instances, especially in our industry, which is technology industry, where the guys who invented something may not have the wherewithal to commercialize it. Whereas the guys who are coming from the back can take it all the way to the market. And hence the premium is always on commercialization and not on ideation. So there is a dictum in companies like Amazon or in Google also. Now, you might shrug some of these ideas suggesting that, hey, these things work in Amazon and Google, not in our company. But that's a myth. If Indians, Indian is heading a company like Google today, right? Like Microsoft today. If Indians are working there, what difference does it really make? So I think it's a bizarre thought that it works in the US, it doesn't work in Bangalore. I don't think so. It's a human tendency. Creativity is a human trait. Just a trait. It just needs the right ecosystem, and that's why leadership plays a role. So I was talking about Amazon and Google. In Amazon and Google kind of company, there's a very simple dictum. The dictum is, by the way, this is the only slide I have, so don't anticipate. You're wondering कि आगे क्यों नहीं जा रहा है? So in companies like Amazon and Google, and in many companies, what happens is that the dictum is that you don't take your idea to your boss. Don't take your idea to your boss. It's not that your boss is unintelligent to decipher what you're thinking, but think of a very simple analogy. The simple analogy is like this. Suppose you are a father and you have a 2-year-old kid. Okay? Are you fantasizing? Scared. Alright. Suppose you're not a father and you have a 2-year-old kid. Which one is more scary? So we'll start with the first one. Alright, we'll go with the first one then. So you have a kid, for instance. Now you love your kid, 2-year sweetheart. Do you think that your neighbor loves your kid the way you love your kid? Beautiful kid, by all, it's a standard beautiful kid. Because beauty lies in the eyes of beholder. So this is a beautiful kid that everybody would say, wow, that's like good. Obviously your your neighbor would care the least whether your kid is hungry or whatever. So for your kid, living kid, by the way, your parent doesn't share the same level of love. How can you even imagine that for your idea, which is in your mind, your boss will even appreciate it? Am I making sense to you? So what happens is that we have this paradox that if we like something, we assume that everybody should like it. If they don't like it, it's a problem with them, not a problem with my idea. You take your idea to your boss, right? And the first thing that he does is, okay, what about the Excel sheet which I asked you last evening? Is it ready? Here goes your idea out of the window. So the dictum in these organizations that don't take your ideas to your bosses. Take it to your spouse, no. Don't take your ideas to your bosses. You should always take your ideas to your colleagues. Because your colleagues will actually be the most critical people about your idea. How can you think like that? It doesn't work that way. And the boss should only say that if you can get me 6 people out of your team who buy into your idea, I'll fund your idea. Otherwise, I'll not fund your idea. How's that? Because if this guy is unable to convince 6 of his own people about the idea, how the heck will he convince the customer to pay money? Most innovations fail because he has some goodwill with his boss and his boss is like, do some experiment. And he does an experiment, by the time he hits the market is moved further. And many people have this tendency, and that is very special in our country. Many people have this tendency of keeping things very secret. Secret, they only tell to their spouse, only when she's asleep, you know. Did you say something? So, people have this tendency of playing in secrecy. But I think that creativity does not thrive in secrecy. If you are creative, and if you open up your creative wings, and if people challenge you, as a result you become much more creative. You become much more audacious. The single biggest reason why a mistake in an open source operating system, Linux, would be far faster rectified than a proprietary operating system, which is Windows. Because more number of eyes will see the mistake, the quicker the mistake will get rectified, isn't it? Simple thing. Same happens to all of us. Our ideas, our thought process would have mistakes. And if you open up these thought processes to people, obviously you should have the courage to take these bashings. But it gets rectified. That is the whole idea about these organizations. Another thing I want to tell you is this, that just focus on the board here. Yes, please.
See, people, as I said, they should be open to their ideas. Right? But then people don't discuss fear of being
Rejection.
No, more than rejection is someone else
Steals away.
That is the biggest thing.
Yeah. It doesn't happen. So I don't know. So there is one answer to your question, sir. The answer is that imagine you are having a real good idea, and if somebody steals your idea, is it that that's the only idea you ever had? Okay, thanks. You can come with another good idea. And because the premium is on implementation, the premium is always in implementation. And if the other guy has actually implemented the idea, I'll give full marks to that guy. And hence, I think our whole tendency of keeping things secretive, unless you're working in defense, then I'll give it to you. The whole idea of working in secrecy has these two very fundamental assumptions. The first assumption is that the idea which you have, nobody else is capable of having. That's the first assumption. Second assumption is that if you cannot execute it, somebody else cannot also execute it. What if somebody has a better idea than what we have? Suppose you want to work on a chalk, on a blackboard, and somebody is actually working on an idea which is this marker on the whiteboard. Both serve the same purpose. If you get delayed in executing your idea, somebody else takes it to the market. And it is so much popular in the world that if you look at the history of inventions and innovations, invariably the highest amount of premium goes to the people who can execute an idea. Look at movies. Have you seen the movies that are made out of novels? Have you actually seen, many times I have not even heard about the novel on which the movie has been made, isn't it? Happens or not? Which made more sales, the novel or the book? I mean the novel or the movie? Movie. Not because of the investment, but somebody realized that idea in reality. Harry Potter is a great example. Lord of the Rings is a great example, right? The whole trilogy of Foundation, Isaac Asimov is a great example. So execution, and in India we are shy. The big challenge we have in our culture is that we are very shy people, we in general. So we are shy because of two reasons. The first reason is that we are humble. कि यार ठीक है सब करते हैं क्या बड़ी बात है. You know, everybody does it, so what's the big deal? So I'm also doing it. You're not tom-tom about it. That's the first challenge we have. And the second challenge is that of fear. What if I share my secret to somebody? Somebody will pounce on me and go ahead. And that's one big reason that very few Indian leaders write books. Ratan Tata has not written a book single. Azim Premji, there is no book by him. Ambani brothers are too busy making money, so they don't. Any paper they make cannot put us. That's like a mentality that they have. None of the Indian leaders.
We will upload this.
Sorry?
We will upload this video.
Yeah, I don't care. How does it matter, man? That's fine. Please do that. With subtitles. Ratan Tata, former chairman. So the whole idea is that our leaders are too busy living in the present. And that's the reason why in our B schools, we cannot talk about anything or anybody but Bill Gates, Jack Welch, Steve Jobs. Why? Why cannot we talk about Indian leaders? Because Indian leaders have not shared anything worth talking about. As simple as that. Do we have dearth of leaders in India? No.
Abdul Kalam.
That's it. And he wrote. And that's why he's so respected. But there are very few people, right, in science or in politics, very handful of. Whereas in US, even before they become famous, they start writing, you know what? At least my 10th book will be famous when I become. That's a tendency. They are voracious writers. We don't write. So you're too humble or we're too afraid. That's our nature. But that needs to be changed. There's also Japanese nature by it. Japanese people are very, very sort of introvert when it comes to writing. I'll give you a small example of why we are the way we are. Now, I have a friend of mine who teaches in the US, and we often have this discussion about, you know, how is it education there and how is the difference in education here. And he says that the fundamental difference between the education out there and education here, and this is very important because you soon will be parents. So it's very critical. So he said that in the US what happens is, or mostly in the West what happens is that if a teacher asks a question, okay, there's a question. Students are allowed to have different answers to the same question. So student by student, batch by batch, year by year, the answer keeps changing. And teacher is quite okay with that. Okay, answers don't match, it's fine. Whereas in India, even if the teacher changes the question,
Answer has to be the same.
answer remains the same. Student by student, batch by batch, year by year. So in my engineering college, I was actually told that if you get a photocopy of this book from page 96 to 104, there'll be a question for sure from this. And I did precisely that. I didn't even know the title of the book, but 96 to 104. The photocopier guy knew it, that is syllabus mein ye photocopy. That's the level at which we have actually sliced and diced our knowledge system. एक क्वेश्चन यहाँ से आएगा, 4 क्वेश्चन करने साथ में से you'll be through. We've actually engineered the whole damn thing. Little doubt we are good in generics in pharmaceutical industry, right? So the idea is that we need to possibly, and we all need to, we need to possibly think about the first principles once in a while. And this brings me to this very interesting aspect about creativity. This comes a little bit from reading and the research. The aspect is this, that how do you become more creative as an individual? Forget about this company. Okay, this company is incidental. Trust me, this company, you working in this company, no qualms. You working in this company is completely incidental. Nobody's parents said that mera beta pada hoke. Ain't happening. Right? So in your trajectory of career, this company is very much incidental. You are destined for something more profound perhaps. On creativity. So the whole idea is that how can you be more creative on a day-to-day basis? So there are 3 things which research says can possibly help you be more creative. The first thing, and write it down, ma'am. The first thing that people say that allow you to be more creative is called multiple affiliations. Write it down. Multiple affiliations or multiple affinities. Multiple affinities. Anybody? What does it mean? Multiple affinities? Want to give it a shot?
Maybe discuss your idea with altogether different teams.
Okay. What else? Okay. What else? What is multiple?
Different things.
Different things. What else?
Lots of hobbies, lots of things to do.
Very good. What else?
We churn it layer by layer. So we come across various layers of understanding, knowledge,
Okay.
empowerment. It's like a funnel which has various layers, like a pyramid.
Okay. I take that. What else? Okay, another thing before I do that. In India, in our country, in our societies, we also have this challenge that you should not be ridiculed. Which means if you speak, everybody should actually take note. Aha, that's the point. The bro is talking. Why? What's the big deal in that? Why can't you make a loose statement once in a while? Why can't you just take a guess and allow people to just make fun of you? What's the big deal? Who are you? What's the big deal, man? These inhibitions of ours are the biggest killer of innovation. एक दिन सबको दिखा दूंगा मैं कौन हूँ. वो कभी नहीं आता दिन वो. You have to exhibit yourself and express like a flower. Every day your fragrance has to fill the room. That one day never comes. People will be gone by. Suno. It will be gone. See, people like Abraham Lincoln. I'll come to my point, not digressing, it's detours slightly. Loop. People like Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi, these guys were shot at point blank range. Which means people were there who hated these guys to an extent that they'll shoot them. Who are you and me to ever imagine or assume that nobody should hate us? Aren't we actually carrying too big a burden on our shoulders? Nobody should hate me, everybody should love me, people should salute me every day. It's okay, right? So open up, speak out. There's no points in writing emails to me, what the question that you asked at 10:45. Doesn't happen that way. So here's a question back to you. We're talking about what is multiple affinities?
Get involved into multiple things.
Yeah.
Take more interest.
In?
Subscribe to varied ideas.
Varied ideas. What else?
Affinity means liking, right? Multiple likings.
Let's meet outside. Who else? What else, guys? I just gave you a small lecture. You need to open up. You want a PPT? Only then you will get convinced. Now I'm talking. You were so used to. Sorry?
Engage in different things.
Engaged. Multiple engagements. Yeah.
Multiple phases.
Faces.
Multiple actions.
That's fine, I'm with you. What else? Ma'am, are you thinking too deep? Don't, it's not allowed. Be a service level thinker, that's fine.
Like
Go ahead.
multiple people in different fields maybe.
Yeah. So there's a company called IDEO. It's a design firm. So in the interview, when they interview people, they ask some very simple things to them. They ask 2 questions to them basically, apart from all the resume and whatever else you have. The first question that they ask is, how many affiliations do you have? And that's a classic way of checking if somebody is really creative or not. And they ask, how many affiliations do you have? Which means in a given month, what are the activities which you do in which you are participating actively? Not personal activities, I take care of my children, my neighbor's children. So, if this is the affiliation, is it visible?
No.
Is it transparent?
You get a black point.
This is the only slide we don't. This is the only slide, but we don't need it. Like there's a board behind it.
Oh yeah.
If you don't mind.
No, I have no mind. So, look at this. Is it visible now, sir?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Multiple affiliations means that at any given point in time, how many activities do you do where you are actively involved? One of them is working in this organization. Another one could be actually taking judo karate classes. Third could be teaching somebody Bharatanatyam. Fourth could be taking cookery classes. Fifth could be teaching somewhere. Sixth could be writing open source codes and hacking systems perhaps. Seventh could be being a part of the riders club or a bikers club. Eighth could be being a member of your association and doing some blood, blood donation camps or sapling plantation camps, etc. Which means that are you really able to fill your entire month or entire week by doing activities in which you are actively involved? You can't write, I watch two movies a day kind of stuff. Ain't happening. What it shows, and if you do the exercise, and I'll encourage you to do the exercise, you would realize very soon that a disproportionate and inordinate amount of your time actually gets sucked up into your job. A very large amount of our days living time is actually taken up by our job.
But you could have multiple affinities at the job itself.
So definition was outside the job. You can. Definition was outside the job. Because the job is not your life, of course. It's incidental now. The pretext was it is incidental. Right? So, what happens now is this. That even if you have multiple affiliations within your job, I take that point, right? The question is that if most of what you are learning from is from your employee or employer, your firm, right? If most of what you are learning from is from your company, the question is, where does the company learn from? But if you are learning from the company only, so there is a limited knowledge flow which is happening. On the contrary, if you learn a lot from outside the company, not only that you become much richer in terms of your knowledge and understanding, you also contribute back to the company. These are living organisms. Organizations are like organisms, isn't it? They take birth, they grow, they fall sick, they repair, and one day they die. Happens with all the organizations. And even human beings are organisms. We are very much. So we need to have multiple affiliations. There's a one single question that makes people highly uncomfortable. And the irony is that people assume that your affiliation to a company is equivalent to your loyalty. Not necessary. You're working in this company for the last 5 years does not mean you are loyal to this company. It might also mean that you didn't have a better option. Why not? It can mean you have nothing better to do in life, so possibly you are stuck here. But your employer thinks that, oh, he's a loyal dude. Even his children will work here. So, because we were not destined to work in a given setup, the idea has to be to increase our affiliations. The second important thing is how can a leader or a manager infuse creativity? So my first recommendation stroke request to you would be this. Develop affiliations. Go all the way out to not hang out in a movie or a bar on the weekend. Try to do something different that can actually enrich you. And Bangalore is a place, by the way. If there is any place in this country where you can have multiple affiliations, maybe except Bombay, this is the place, guys. I can't think of any other place. While you travel, this is the place where you can have multiple affiliations. What is that you cannot do here on the weekends? When I used to work in my last employer, every weekend I used to go out, freak out, do all these consulting things. None of them were paid, by the way. People don't pay me money. You can check out my clothes. So, all these were pro bono exercises. I used to go out on the weekends. My boss never bothered because nobody paid me anything. So he said, okay, go. Even the employer doesn't pay me, so no one cares. Teaching. Even when I am today, I'm in IIM, almost every week I'll go out, do these exercises, etc. It's very important for me because I can always close myself in the IIM campus and say, okay, I'll do research. That's not happening. How good is my research if I cannot influence practice? Tell me. How good is a doctor who cannot operate on a patient? He can make great science, but if he can't save somebody's life, what's the point? It's pointless. Right? That's multiple affiliation. Last thing, and then I'll close. Probably you can ask a question or I'll go back home. The point is, what role can leaders play for others to be more creative? There are three things that leaders can do. The culture part. Three things are this. The first thing is the purpose.
Hey, Pawan,
Yep.
you told there were three things and you started off with multiple affinities. What was the other?
Yeah, this is the second thing. That's the first thing, and I'll come to the third thing.
Okay.
I think I need this kind of a nudging once in a while. Thanks for that. Second thing is this is called the 3 tiers or the 3 rules of creative motivation. The first thing is purpose. If you think about it, in our careers, let alone in our lives, there is a significant portion of our life, and there are a huge number of people who are by and large, and that might include all of us, by the way, in this room, that are by and large without a purpose. If you ask yourself really clearly that what is the purpose for which I should come to office every day? What I'm achieving? Apart from maybe paying the EMIs and writing some codes and serving a few customers, what's the purpose? And I'll give you a small story to make you understand the meaning of the word purpose in a corporate context. The context is like this. This is Wipro, and this is Hyderabad Wipro office. And there's a big oil and gas, there's a big utilities customer of Wipro. The CI of the customer comes down to a bunch of about 700 people in the ODC, 700 massive people. We booked a gala event, and the CIO came, and everyone was bored that okay, he's again going to talk about some metrics, some improvements, some cost cutting, etc. He came to the board and he played a video. The video was like this. There's an old woman sitting in her drawing room. She's watching TV, and she smells gas. So unlike in India where gas are in cylinders, there the gas is in tubes. So she smells gas and she's terrified. So she quickly picks up the phone, calls a helpline, and the guy on the other side says, "Ma'am, don't worry, we'll send something. You please go out in the open." In the next 1 minute, the nearest guy who's patrolling comes down, does everything, goes back, and the woman goes inside, and the video ends. So the CIO comes up to the stage and he says, "You know what, guys? The guy who picked up the call on the call center was manned by Wipro. The guy who wrote the algorithm to find the nearest patrolling guy was actually written by you. The person who manages the whole thing on a back end is done by you sitting here in Bangalore. So what you do in this organization for us is not write codes. You actually make the difference between somebody's life and death. That's how close life and death could be from what you do. So all of a sudden, this leader has actually elevated the level of thinking of all these people from simply writing codes to a very high level purpose in life. And that's why great products are made. These guys, the so-called leader breed of people, the leader breed of people are able to take their individual ambitions into a collective purpose and leave it at that. There's nothing else. Because one thing that we often misunderstand about leadership is motivation. And I believe, and there's a huge amount of research on that to substantiate what I'm saying here, is that motivation can only come from within. The only thing that can come from outside is demotivation. Let me explain this to you. We are sitting in this room right now here. There's an AC. Okay? Assuming that the AC is at about 24 degrees right now. If I increase the temperature to about 35 degrees, will you be excited to sit in the room any further? Perhaps not. Right? I might be talking great, but if I increase the temperature to 35 degrees, you will possibly leave this room, unless you are a die-hard guy about innovation. I'll stay back perhaps. 35 degrees. But if I talk nonsense, which I might still be, but if this room temperature is soothing at about 18 degrees, will you still stay in the room? No. Which means that this AC, which is an external factor, can demotivate you quickly, but cannot motivate you. You see that? That is asymmetric behavior. Try to understand this. We call this paraphernalia to oneself. All the surrounding factors can demotivate you very quickly. Like a bad road can demotivate you. Bad weather can demotivate you. But a great road and a great weather cannot motivate you unless intrinsically you have a purpose. Am I making sense to you? So all the perks, size of the cubicle, reporting structure, all these are very extrinsic things. You don't need any of that to do great work. But if you don't get, it can demotivate you. So that's why these things are given, so that, okay, guys, don't worry about that, you're doing fine. Otherwise, how come people do great things sitting in a garage? Where the cubicle, where the reporting structure, where is the pay package? None of these things are available. How come some of the biggest inventions in the history of mankind happen in the World War? World War is when lots of inventions happened. How come Israel become one of the most innovative countries in the world? You are having a conference right now here and the rocket can come and hit some of the soil. It can happen. It is great. It is happening as we are talking today, isn't it? How come they are some of the most innovative people in the world? Drip irrigation was invented in Israel. There is hardly any water to drink. Seawater salination was invented there. These things come because of what we call as scarcity, adversity, constraints. And I think, and that is the reason why bosses have this very perennial challenge to motivate people to innovate. I think they should stop doing it. Instead of motivating people to innovate, I think they should just remove the hurdles of innovation. If they're motivated enough, they'll do it. Otherwise, it's time to replace the guy. You can never ever motivate externally someone to innovate. You can ask them to sell something, goof up, but not to innovate. So that's purpose. The second thing is, people are innovative only if they are given autonomy. Second element is autonomy. What is autonomy? What is autonomy?
Power.
Yeah. Autonomy, is it autonomy power?
Freedom.
Freedom. Yeah. Power onto oneself, freedom. Right? Autonomy means you are autonomous, you are free to do whatever you want to do. Another irony that happens here in our organizations is, when we select people to work in these firms like yours, people on average would have had at least 17 years of professional education under their belt, isn't it? 17 years of professional education, right from first standard to a graduation, not post-graduation. 17 years of solid UKG, LKG, everything put together. 17 years. 17 years is pretty much, you can think of as 1/3 of somebody's working life. With 17 years of work experience, somebody is coming into your organization and still you are telling the guy, oh, exactly the work needs to be done. Where is autonomy? Why not hire robots then? If exactly the outcome is defined, the process is defined, why do we have 17 years of work experience? To understand English? So we don't understand this very fundamental thing that given the autonomy to people, they'll do wonders. But the fear of failure that this guy will screw up is what doesn't allow us to give the autonomy. So this is what typically happens in organizations. HR functions, you want these guys to remain in the organization. These guys are outliers. Every appraisal cycle, they're asked to leave. Even at the time of entry, you have to be 65% and above all through, isn't it? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to make organization even sharper and sharper like this. We call this as a mean-centric organization. You try to increase the mean without and shrinking the variance or the standard deviation. This guy sitting here is an outlier. He doesn't come to office on time. He doesn't even take bath. Right? He doesn't talk to anybody. He's not a team player. One big letdown in the corporate world, he's not a team player. So what? What's the problem with that? Why should everyone be a team player? Why should everything be a team task? Not necessary. There are people who might be individual genius and leave them at that. You need 1% of people in the organization who are not team players. Absolutely fine with that. Not everyone has to be a team player. That's okay. There's no dictum. These guys are politely asked to leave the company. But what you need to understand is that today's outlier is tomorrow's mean. Right? Today's outlier is tomorrow's mean. SAP as a company came out of IBM. There are a bunch of people in SAP, in IBM then in 1965, who were contemplating with this whole idea of why can't we have an enterprise application instead of selling mainframes. They went to the IBM folks, said this was the idea, they said no, go back to Germany. They went to Germany, they went to this company called Siemens. Siemens invested in SAP, and the rest, as we know, is a history. The guys who started SAP were the outliers in IBM's scheme of things. They created SAP. 92, IBM was almost on the verge of bankruptcy. Correct? So what you need to do is to allow those outliers, to give them the environment in the organization that they are comfortable enough. They don't need to be taking the center place. Allow them some place so they can hang around. That's called autonomy. The third thing is what we call as practice. Practice means that give people enough resources so that they do not run dry of ideas. Suppose you have an idea. Don't make it difficult for this guy to get an approval to even experiment with that idea. Which means that either you show me the money in an Excel sheet, or I'm not giving you money at all to experiment. That's a real killer for innovation. It kills innovation. You say that I'll give you this percentage of money which you're asking for, show me some early results. If I see the results, I'll pay you the rest. That's how things work. That's how companies like Cisco work. Cisco has this policy called 7-to-1. So, Cisco acquires a company every week. And Cisco has been doing it for the last 20 years. They acquire a company every week. Look at the upstream of how many companies they should be investing into identifying, soliciting, to actually do downstream. Intel also does significant investment. So the idea is that you invest into 10 companies. Assume that 7 will fail, 2 will succeed, and 1 will be a blockbuster. And the profits from one company will recoup for all the investments you have done. Same applies in the organizations also. Why should every employee in the company be an employee who should get you huge money? There are people who may not get you huge money, they'll get you ideas. There are people who are not extroverts, they're introverts. Don't call them to every meeting, that's fine. What's the big deal in that? Why should there be an update meeting every Monday morning, everyone has to come, you have to speak, please. Not required. So we need to understand that organizations are meant to utilize the best out of people. That's all. Organizations are the instruments to utilize the best which is available in individuals. That is the meaning of the organization. It is not meant to change people. It is meant to leverage people, to meet an objective which individually they cannot meet. Right? That's how we organize ourselves, like an army, like a fleet of people, like a firm. So the last thing I want to tell you is this word, which is very, very critical. Humor. You can use the U also, H-U-M-O-U-R, humor. Humor is almost similar to creativity. I go to the extent of saying that people who are not creative are not humorous also. And the people who are humorous are by default very creative. One of the challenges that we have around ourselves is that we confuse sincerity with seriousness. Isn't it? To project that you are sincere, you have to appear to be serious. You know what? Even in this room there are many people. Cut the crap, man. I mean, who cares if you're writing something or not? I'm gone anyways after 5 minutes. Is the video on?